Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Raw Knuckles podcast. We'd really appreciate it if you'd like, subscribe, and share with a friend.
I was so excited about potentially playing for Arizona. Like I had Shane Doan was on the team, and the type of mold of player that I envisioned I would need to be in the NHL. Like who else do you want to learn from than Shane Doan?
When I stepped on the ice, I never backed down and I never stayed down.
And I was vicious and I was malicious, and I don't care.
He's a freaking madman. Look at him going to town. That'll be a suspension.
Blake Wheeler, welcome to the show, pal. I appreciate you taking the time and finally get to meet you. Growing up in Boston and having retired from the Canadians, I was down in Beantown when you ended up there.
Yep.
And I want to start this because I want to go back to the beginning and playing in Minnesota and being as tall as you are and all that. But what happened in Boston? Because here you are, you had a great start there in Boston, and then all of a sudden, I mean, they trade you, and I'm like, were you not being a Bruin? Were you not being a Bruin like Phil Kessel wasn't being a Bruin? What was the deal there?
I think it turned out to be a bit of a numbers game. I think we had some awesome teams. I mean, those teams were built to win really right away, clearly, because the year I was traded, they ended up winning it all. So I think it was a numbers game. I think my role was sort of just diminishing. Some younger players were elevating their games. Brad Marchand had. I think he'd kind of just been called up that year, and he was kind of making a name for himself. And Tyler Seguin had just been drafted. So I think it was probably a little bit of everything. I think when you're, I hadn't really established myself as a top six forward yet. I was kind of like just one of, just kind of on the outskirts a little bit, and I was expendable. I think at the end of the day, and I wasn't a guy that clearly, was going to get traded and they were going to miss a whole lot. And so that, it was a great lesson for a lot of reasons. You missed out on a chance to win a Stanley Cup, you get traded, and it's definitely a kick in the nuts for sure. So it was a good lesson to learn as a young player.
Then you got to play with me though.
Then I got to.
I needed a line mate, so that was a big.
We wouldn't be sitting here today if it didn't happen. So everything happens for a reason, right?
Awesome.
Yeah, it does. Listen, drafted in 2004, you went to the Breck School in Minnesota. Growing up in Minnesota, you drafted 5th overall out of high school. Like, I looked at the numbers, okay? That's insanity. 27 games, 89 points. I mean, why couldn't you get 90? Christ. But
you missed the 3 games of the state tournament. It ended up being 100.
No. I didn't miss it because I mentioned that to Tim. You had 11 points in 3 games. I'm like, but
there you go. So it was 100, 90.
Yeah, you had the hundo. So
I got the hundo.
So you get drafted. Were you shocked getting drafted in the first round, 5th overall, being what were you, 18-year-old kid?
I was shocked the fact that I was at the draft, to be completely honest with you. I mean, I had who's now been my agent for, a long time, 20 years. I went into that season like not even knowing that I was draft eligible. None of this was on my radar. And, towards kind of the second half of that high school season, I was starting to talk to NHL scouts and stuff. And I'm like, why am I talking to these people? I have no business talking to them, and then he let me know, like, hey, you're draft eligible. Like, why not? There's no harm in doing it. And then it just kind of snowballed, being a tall kid that, moved decently for that age. I guess that was an intriguing thing. And just, obviously the upside game, right? When you're a prospect, they're always projecting what your upside is. So, when you're, 6'5" and 180 pounds soaking wet, they see a frame that they can build on. And so I was yeah, I had an inkling that I could potentially be a first round pick, which once again was kind of blew me away. And when Phoenix made the pick, yeah, I was shocked.
Was your dad there?
Was my dad there?
His dad's like the biggest fan, right? His dad's the best. Was
Yeah,
Dad a
the
fan?
funny thing about that is like it's Wayne Gretzky on the screen, right? And I'm sorry, on the stage, and so like the whole place is going crazy, and it's in Raleigh, North Carolina. So like the Canes had just made their pick at 4. They picked Laddie at 4. Then Wayne Gretzky comes on stage, and it's like kind of like pandemonium in there. Like it's just like the whole buzz of the whole night is like right now. And then they make the pick, and the place goes dead quiet. And everyone's like, "Who the hell is that?" And the only voice you hear in the whole place is my dad. He stands up, he goes, like, "Blake, that's you!" I'm like, "Oh shit, awesome. I gotta go up there."
Nah, that had to be awesome. What a feeling. Christ, I always tell Tim back when I was in a bar when I got drafted. We didn't go to the draft back then, right? You just heard about it. They sent me a letter 2 weeks later. Right.
Yeah.
But
congrats. Show up. This is the big
it was crazy.
Yeah. And I think it's constantly changing, but it was pretty cool to be a part of. I didn't know how long I was gonna be sitting there, but I went from, it could be a long night to having dinner with Wayne Gretzky. So it was quite the night.
That's cool. Now, growing up in Minnesota, obviously hockey hotbed, New England, Minnesota, both those areas produce a lot of players. Growing up there, though, being at 6'5", being that tall kid, and I've seen in the NHL, I've seen guys come in that are so tall, they have a hard time, moving the feet, and they get gangly. They're, like the baby deer sometimes. I saw it with Jesperi Kotkaniemi here, and not that he's real tall, but he had these long, gangly legs, and he had a little difficult time skating. How was that for you? Was it tough, or did you pick it up right away?
It was. There was always like a year where I wasn't growing, and those were always really good years. And then it was like every other year, I felt like I would grow a lot. And the worst year for me, I think I was like 14 or something, and I grew like 6 or 7 inches in kind of a year. And I'll never forget my coach at the time kind of being like what happened to you? Like you can't you can't even stand up on the ice anymore. And then like I remember sort of at the end of the year, like I kind of stopped growing, and I figured, I kind of reacclimated my body a little bit, and that was kind of the growth spurt that got me into being like 6'3". So I didn't grow a whole lot after that, and then from there, it was more just filling out. I was so tall and skinny even when I was drafted. And then I think a real blessing was going to the University of Minnesota. So from the time I got drafted to the time I was in the NHL, that was 4 years, right? So by the time I got to Boston, I was 6'5" and almost 220 pounds. So the Bambi stage had kind of already passed a little bit. I was kind of a little bit more ready just by virtue of having a little bit more time.
You're also like you played other sports though in high school, right? Weren't you played football? You're kind of like a freak athlete too, right? Yeah, receiver.
I don't know about a freak. I mean, freak.
You're just a freak, yeah.
No, yeah, I played high school football. I mean, the year that we're talking high school hockey, we won the state high school football tournament as well. Smaller school, so don't get too excited. But that's actually funny. My son, he's turning 10 here pretty soon, so he's really getting into football now. And so now I'm digging up old highlight tapes of touchdowns. That's fun too.
Oh wow.
So the draft there, 5th overall by the Yotes, and you end up signing with the Bruins. You don't go to Arizona, and I'm wondering what that's about. Is it about playing hockey in the desert, or was it a financial decision? Because I have a really difficult time believing that the Bruins, because at the time they call it fiscal responsibility, but I call it they were fucking cheap. and I can't imagine they offered you more money than fucking Arizona.
You know what? It was neither. I played my junior year in Minnesota, and I remember after that last game, like my dad was there, like my agent now was there, and we kind of like I had this feeling that like I was ready to take the next step. And all along that whole year, like I was so like excited about potentially playing for Arizona. Like I had Shane Doan was on the team, and the type of mold of player that I envisioned I would need to be in the NHL. Like who else do you want to learn from than Shane Doan? And I'd been to a few games like when they played the Wild in Minnesota, and like I mean he treated me like gold. Like I would go down to the locker room after the game, and this guy. I mean, I wasn't the gum on his shoe at the time, but he would take time. He would talk to my parents. I mean, he was like the most like the classiest guy you could imagine. So I was so excited to play with Shane Doan. Peter Mueller was a high school teammate of mine at Breck, actually. So I knew him. I knew like a handful, like Keith Yandel I knew from USA camps. There was just like a crop of young players who I had either been to like development camps with or played USA camps with. So I was like, man, this is gonna be great. Like if I could play on that team, I was so excited. And after that game, like that's kind of what I said. I was like, all right, like I'm ready to go. Let's do this. And my agent was like, hold the phone here. They're maybe not quite as excited as you are. So that was, I think what happened was, for the time I got drafted, I think everyone that was a part of the group that drafted me got fired, whether I was responsible for that or not. So there was a whole new regime. There was a whole new, like there was 4 years of like prospects that had been building up ahead of me. So I think they kind of had like a group of prospects that, they were excited about, that were their own prospects. And it's not like I, lit up the world in college hockey. Like I did well in college and everything, but it's not like I was, leading the country in scoring. There wasn't like a whole lot to be super excited about. So that's when, my agent was like, we can declare that you're turning pro, and then that basically starts the clock, and then you can be a free agent, and we'll see if there's a team that maybe has a little bit more desire for you than Arizona currently has, and to be honest with you, I made substantially less money by going to Boston just by virtue of being on the new CBA. I was drafted in 2004, which was still the old CBA. So that signing bonus for 5th overall would have, that was real money. That was like $1 million, I think. So going to Boston, it went from like 900 something per year signing bonus to like 90.
90.
Yeah. So, there you go. I knew it was going to come out.
What was your signing bonus, Nux? Did you have one when you signed?
7,500 whopping Canadian dollars.
What was yours, Buster?
Mine was actually, I could jump in on this conversation.
Yeah, you're probably old CBA, so you're probably cleaned up.
No, what they did, it was my age. I was like 26, so they did, it was like 250 or something. They put all 3 years into like one or something.
They just felt bad for you, like this guy.
And I just spent it all. Like I was rich.
This guy could use the money.
Yeah. Oh, anyways.
So those, and again, I look at your numbers, and Christ, you've been as consistent a player that there is in the NHL, and that says a lot about you as a hockey player and as a person. And you put the numbers up. You're the captain now of the Jets, and looking back, your Boston years, you got to play with Buster, and you get to Winnipeg. Claude Julien was a coach in Boston, right? When you were there? Okay. So Claude, then you had Rama in Atlanta, and then you start with Claude Noel. But the guy I want to talk about is Paul Maurice. And listen, you played for the three coaches before, and he comes in. What was the biggest difference for you with a guy like Paul Maurice than your previous three coaches? And what is it about that guy? Because there's something about him, right? He's well-liked, and he's successful as a coach.
I'll never forget Paul's first meeting with us. Things hadn't, gone well with Claude Noel. We just were kind of in a funk, and they made the coaching change. And so we were all kind of like not knowing what to expect. We were all just a little bit like skittish. And Paul walked in the room, and we're all sitting there, and it's dead quiet. And I don't know if this is like a planned thing that he does, or like if he rehearses this in front of the mirror or something. But he has glasses, and like he takes his glasses off, and with his like deep kind of like bass voice, he's like, "Gentlemen, my name's Paul Maurice. I'll be your new head coach." And it was just kind of like that was it, and everyone was like, "Oh." We're like standing attention, like do whatever you say. He had the room from day one. Like he had us eating out of his hand from day one. And I think to answer your question, the thing that stands out about Paul that the players really respond to really well is you're not just like a name on the lineup chart to him. You're not just like a piece of meat. Like I think that he genuinely does care about the guys. He gets to know you a little bit as a person. Like he asks about your family, about your kids, about your parents, about just things like that maybe going on in your life that actually might affect your performance. That I'm sure that never happened to you back in the day. But for the players, like
never.
Yeah, exactly. To have a conversation with your coach, and it's like, wow, like this guy knows me. You know what I mean? A little bit. I think that makes all the difference, and it makes the guys go that extra little like bit for the coach, because it's like, well, he's clearly invested in me. He sees me as a person, not just a piece of meat, and you reciprocate that too, right? Then you start treating him the same way. Like if he makes a decision that maybe isn't in your best interest, you're like, well, maybe he's not just fucking me. Maybe this is actually better for the team, right? And I think that just creates a better vibe in the room.
Yeah, you build like that trust, right? Sounds like I've heard nothing. I've heard all the amazing things about him. I never played for him, but
yeah, and like just to sit down and talk to the coach about something that's not just about how you fucked up the night before is kind of unique, and it's kind of cool. And then it's like there's actually a relationship there. Whereas, any other time you talk to a coach, it's like, oh my god, like what did I do wrong? How did I screw up last night? The video starts and you're like, oh no, not again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we've all been there.
So, what about the coach now? Have you got to meet him yet, or do you know much about him? And then his son was like in Winnipeg, wasn't he? Like our
Ryan Bonus, who I believe is now the assistant GM for the Ottawa Senators. I believe he's come a long way. He was player services.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. For just I think that first year when you were there, Mr. Winnipeg.
That was my nickname, Nux, was Mr. Winnipeg, and it wasn't for like the way I played on the ice, so that's for sure.
Yep. The social.
Booty Shake Mondays. Booty Shake Mondays.
Shake Mondays. Don't quote me on this, but I don't think they're like the Palomino Club moved, so I don't know if they're still a thing.
Oh, everything shut down when I left. That's it couldn't be the same, right? No, I'm sure. I just been there one time. It was a little bit different, but
yeah, right.
You mean you don't go back, Tim, in the summers?
Well, not that I do, but I just don't. No one knows about it. Go in disguise.
I've met Bones a few times. Talked to him on the phone a bunch in the summer. Talked to him here in Winnipeg a few times, and I've heard nothing but great things. I've heard nothing but kind of the same things about Paul. Just very good communicator. Like has the players' backs, and so I anticipate it being a really good fit for our team.
So Winnipeg. Now that we're talking about Winnipeg, and everybody, listen, you talk around the league, you go into Winnipeg, everybody's like, oh, fucking Winnipeg, right? It's just one. And people say, where do you love to play the most? Oh, I love playing in Montreal, the Bell Center, right? Winnipeg's the opposite. But back in my day, all the guys who played there said they friggin' loved it. I mean, Serge Savard, who I played with here at the beginning, played 2-3 years. He retired. Then he ended up, Fergie got him out of retirement. He went to Winnipeg. He said he loved it. He said, everybody loves Winnipeg who plays there. Like, what is it? Is it because the only game in town, the people? What is it?
I think both of those things for sure. Like being the only show in town is pretty unique. Like I've compared it to like I played and so did Buster. Like both played in Green Bay in the USHL, so you kind of get like that almost that Green Bay Packers type of vibe, where like the community just rallies around the team. The community just loves the hockey team, right? And so it's pretty wild. Like the things you read in the media sometimes from like the Winnipeg media, like you feel like a very negative vibe. But everywhere that I've gone in town in my 11 years here, even if like we've just shit the bed for weeks straight on end, like we get nothing but love in this town. Everywhere we go, no matter how good or bad the game is, like they're just so grateful to have a team back that it's like you can do no wrong. The people just they're such good people, and they're so good to us that I think it makes it a fun place to play. Right, you can go out in town and not get your brains bashed in every day if things aren't going well. It's like hey, great game last night, Blake, and you're like, did you watch the game? Like I was awful. Like we were terrible last night.
Stop lying.
Yeah, exactly. So that's been my experience.
Cool.
Yeah, I like.
How
that.
about you,
I like
Buster,
that
there?
Packers reference. That's a good
Yeah.
one. No, I was just thinking too. It's kind of like playing in Atlanta when we played with the Thrashers.
Yeah,
It was like complete opposite Nux. Like I always say you could hear like a guy coughing in section 300, but
yeah, Atlanta was literally polar opposite, like the opposite of Winnipeg. It was
like my brother. I remember my brother came in town for a game and told to get people at the hotel, like at the front desk, like he's coming to watch a Thrashers game, and they were like, "Is that lacrosse team?"
Yeah,
didn't even know they had a hockey team.
I had an awesome Atlanta experience. Like a few years after we left there, my buddy and I, we were driving my car down to Florida. We have a place in Florida, and we stopped in Atlanta for the night. And it was the night of like there was a huge fight. Like it might have been McGregor and it was one of McGregor's fights, and there was like this huge line at this like the only place in Buckhead showing the fight. And he's like, "Well, dude, like you played here, go, And I'm like, man, I don't know if that's gonna work here. So I did. I went up and I went to the bouncer. I'm like, hey man, like I played for the Thrashers. Like, would you let me and my buddy in? And like 5 people in line heard it, and they're like, this guy played for the Thrashers. And the bouncer started laughing at me too. He's like, nah, man, like sorry. And I was so embarrassed.
Oh, I bet, man. I've never heard that. That's amazing.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
I gotta ask you the lockout year. You go to Germany, right? And I asked you because it's funny. I look back when I retired. I had an opportunity to go to Bolzano in Italy, and I'm like, I don't want to bring my family all the way over there. Language, everything, and I kicked myself in the ass for not doing it. But how was that experience? I mean, 1 year with the Jets, then you end up going over there for what 15 games you played there. But how was that? Like, I hadn't played in the NHL for a bit, and all of a sudden you're in Europe.
It was incredible. Like the crazy thing was, like we had just had our first son, and so like a few, not long after that, my wife will know the exact day if how many days it was if you want to know. But I was in a contract year. Like I never really like kind of earned a big deal, so it was like I gotta go play. I can't just sit on my ass and party all lockout. So I had a great opportunity to play in Munich, and Sam and Louis came and met us over there. Like when Louis was like a month old, and we had like the most incredible experience. Munich is such a cool city. The fans there were awesome. My good buddy Paul Stasny came over. We played together over there. So we just had a blast to the point where now Louis is like kind of the coolest thing that he thinks has ever happened to him is that he lived in Germany for 2 months when he was a month old. He wears a Bayern Munich jersey everywhere he goes now. It's crazy, but it was a really cool experience, and I'm grateful that I had that chance because I probably won't do it after, at the end of my career, but it was a good time to do it when I did it.
For sure. Talking playoff hockey and looking back in 2017, 2018, hell of a year. And then you fucking hit Vegas. Like, man, I thought you guys were going to the final for sure. And then to me, it was a bit of a shock. 4-1 to Vegas. I mean, Vegas shocked everybody, obviously, but how difficult was that? I mean, you leave Boston, they win the cup. It's like, and I remember we won in '86, but up until that point, I'm like, we hadn't reached the conference final one time, and then we got to the Stanley Cup. Thank God we won it, because that year afterwards, I'm thinking, yeah, we're gonna get back there. We didn't fucking get back there. I mean, it is freaking so hard to get through the NHL playoffs. But yeah, how was that season for you?
Yeah, I remember like the same thing. Like when when I was in Boston, the veteran guys on the team were like, "Listen, guys, we got to cash in on this opportunity that this group has, because like you don't realize how hard this is." And me being my first couple of years, I'm just like, "Yeah, okay, we're we'll do this every year, no problem. Like this is actually easier than you guys are making it out to be. Like we're gonna have a chance to win this, every year for the next 10." Then yeah, get traded, and in Winnipeg, it's like we didn't make the playoffs for like 5-6 years. Have to like really, wait out kind of a rebuild process to build ourselves back up, and to see that through, and then kind of make it to the playoffs, and then make it to the point where you're a true competitor. That was, yeah, it was. I think we all believed that we had the best team left, in the Final Four. Like after we beat Nashville, like Nashville was, they won the President's Trophy that year. They were kind of like, it was us and them were the 1 and 2 teams in the league all year. And once we got through them, I think we had a real strong belief that we were gonna make it on at least to the next round. And we beat them. We beat Vegas pretty good in Game 1 after an emotional Game 7 in Nashville. And so I think we're feeling pretty good about it. And then you can say what you will, but like team of destiny or bad bounces and all those things might be true. But I mean, they just had a heck of a team. They had a really good team, and we just ran into. Fleury was hot. He stole a couple of games, and it honestly came down to like one play every game, like late in every game. It's like, shit, that's a game we could have won or should have won, and it just didn't go our way. But yeah, it hurt bad. It hurt bad, because then, the next year, like we were kind of one of the best teams all year, and then the second half we faded, and then we run into St. Louis, who kind of, they were the same thing. Like they caught lightning in a bottle, and they were tough, man. I mean, they won it all that year. So, and then like you said, now all of a sudden, we don't make the playoffs last year, and you're kind of like, shit, that those are opportunities that you don't get back.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I look around. There's always guys. I feel so fortunate to have won. And if I left school early, I had a chance to win one my first year, but I didn't. I stayed in school another year. Then I retired in '92, and the Habs won it the next year. So that one right in the middle. If I never won that, I've been like ripping my hair out that I never won a Stanley Cup. Now, I look around the league, and there's guys that, like you, I said, you're a consistent player. You show up, you respect the game, you don't cheat the game, you don't cheat your teammates. And there's certain guys you pull for, and certainly you're one of those guys. And looking at this now, and I saw it today somewhere, and I didn't hate to bring this up. I remember my first year, and I was sitting in the room laughing after practice, and Larry Robinson come up to me, and he goes, "You're having fun, aren't you?" And I go, yeah, I love it. It's everything, I've always wanted to be here. He said, "Well, enjoy it, because it's going to go like that." And I'm like, fuck off, you. I don't want to hear that. You're now the 17th oldest player in the league.
Oh, fuck.
Asshole Knuckles. But being that 17, you're 36 years old. You just talked about Winnipeg. You went through that rebuilding, and now that team kind of 4 years in a row were in the playoffs, and then last year was a down year. And how difficult was that? And what do you look? Your name's out there, right? The trade rumors and all that. This is part of the business. We know that, but it still sucks. What's it look like for you here this year?
Yeah, I think like last year was just a shit year, for so many. I mean, in every way, shape, and form, right? I mean, we lose Paul halfway through the year, and we have, to deal with a coaching change that just kind of is out of nowhere. You know, we go into the year with, I think, high expectations. Like, you add guys like Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon, and you look at our roster and you think, wow, that team is built to win now, right? And so to fall short of expectations is tough. It sucks, and that's part of the business. When you don't reach expectations, then you start looking at, okay, well, how do you make changes? How do you make this better? And so yeah, I mean, I've been real fortunate in 11 years here in Winnipeg. Like, I haven't had to deal with a whole lot of that, potentially being traded or moved. And so I think it's just one of those things you take in stride and, wait, see what happens. And, here we are, we're, still in the same spot. And I think we're still excited about our team. Like, it's not like, we made a bunch of trades and now we're talking about a rebuild here. I think, I think management is just kind of stayed patient and just, has faith in our group that, last year was kind of an anomaly, and there's a lot of good lessons we learned from failing, from having a bad year, from not reaching expectations, and now it's just a matter of what do we do with it, right? I think what I've seen so far is, I mean, guys have a chip on their shoulder. The talk this summer, it's the great thing about our team is that we all get along real well. We got a team that likes each other, and we've been talking all summer, and kind of the vibe is just like, we're not real happy with the way things went. There's a real vibe in our room right now that, hey, say what you got to say, because clearly when you meet expectations, that's part of the business. But, we're hopefully, looking to turn this thing around this year.
How you feeling physically? Was that last year kind of like speaking of consistency, you weren't injured much in your career, were you?
No, I've been so lucky. And last year was like the first year where like and I actually got lucky with the injury too. Like grade 3 MCL, just kind of a freak play. But that was like right when COVID kept shutting games down. So I had a 6 to 8 to 10 week injury, and I only missed like 8 games. I got really lucky with the timing of it. So my body feels great, man. I mean, 36 and 17th oldest player in the league. I don't feel it. I think, like I said, with kind of avoiding some of the big, injuries over my career, I've been lucky to not take a whole lot of that. So I don't feel like it. I feel good. I feel as good as I've ever felt. So I'm, I guess just keep going until they tell me to.
I played with Chelios when he was 48. You think you could play 12 more years?
No, I know I can't do that. I know I can't do that.
Oh, wow.
I definitely have 2, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, you do have 2, and it's going to be interesting to see how this goes. And you talked about that team and how you get along. And last year, listen, a lot of times when things don't go well, and guys, some guys are more outspoken than others. Mark Scheifele talked about, kind of threw some things out there that he maybe didn't want to be there. Is that, and I'm not trying to get you to, I guess, not talk about your teammates, but yeah, it's something I'm kind of interested in the Canadian market. That's all you hear, Canadian stuff all the time, right? And Scheifele buying in, he's going to be here this year with you and try and turn this thing around.
I literally I just left the rink, and we kind of literally just had a conversation about that. Not just randomly. It was more about the media and just, sometimes things get taken out of context. But I think, the thing I know about Scheif is, I mean, he's a very passionate guy, right? I mean, he loves the game. He loves his team. He's invested a big chunk of his career to being a Winnipeg Jet. And when things don't go well, yeah, I mean, there's frustration, and I'm guilty of it more than anyone. You get me in front of a microphone when things don't go well, and I'm bound to say some shit that, you know what I mean? That you gotta think about a little bit. So, no, there is no concern whatsoever on his commitment to our team. I think, I don't want to speak for Mark, but I know that he wants to do well. He wants his team to win. He wants to have success. And when those things don't happen, then you start venting a little bit, and it is what it is. None of us on the team were looking at that saying, "Oh man, why did Shea say that?" I think we're all kind of saying, "Shit,"
We agree.
Yeah, he's right.
Like we're all pissed. Like,
yeah.
So, good on him for like. It's too bad that sometimes it happens in the media, but whatever. Like, no problem.
Yeah, that's the thing in the Canadian markets, and especially this one here. It's like Nick Suzuki yesterday. They name him captain. They're already saying, learn French. Are you taking French yet? Like, they're all over the kid. And it's certainly enough pressure. But, again, the big contract, you put up the numbers, and that comes with it, right? So you still feel for the kid in that. That's the first thing they want to fucking point out. Do you speak French? And that's it a little bit different than this Canadian market because you got both languages, and there's always something that way. But 17th oldest player in the league. Now I'm going to ask you,
just to remind you,
if
you forgot.
Let's hammer that.
What does this old bastard say to the 18-year-old Blake Wheeler? All you've been through now, the 1,046 games, what you've accomplished in this game. What does the 17th oldest player in the league now say to the young Blake Wheeler if he's coming into the league? Watch out for this. Do this. Don't do that.
I would say it sounds weird, but it's kind of like what I'm going to say next is kind of a double-edged sword because I think that this has probably been a huge driver in, playing as long as I've played and the success and all that. But I've just been so fucking hard on myself for all those years and all those games. And looking back, the perspective is obviously a lot easier to say, man, like you didn't have to live like that for, you didn't have to put yourself through the ringer every day. And, but I think that was a useful tool for me, to push myself, to kind of like motivate myself for a long time. And you get to a certain point where you can't do it anymore, right? It just that tank is empty, and so it's been. I think I've matured a lot in the last few years for sure, and kind of looked at myself and the game a little bit differently. But it's hard to you say, hey man, you don't have to be so hard on yourself, and you say that to an 18-year-old kid, and shit, maybe you don't play in the NHL at all, right? So
yeah.
We don't know, right? But anyway, I guess that's what happens when you get to be the 17th oldest player in the league. You start thinking that way.
Did that turn at all, like for you personally? We might even talk about this when you became captain. Like you probably realized you couldn't be that hard on you. Does that make sense? What I'm asking?
Yeah, it makes sense. But I think it was the opposite. I think I think I was always really hard on myself, and I think becoming captain kind of put it into overdrive. It was like,
oh wow, yeah,
like
a little more pressure. Feel it, right?
The pressure is tenfold, and answering the questions every day, and just kind of look like I know my teammates are looking at me to you kind of never can be off, right? You can never have your foot off the gas, and so that I take a lot of pride in that, showing up to work every day and being trying to be the hardest working guy and set the example that way. But yeah, I think inevitably when a game doesn't go your way, because we're fucking human beings and things happen out there. Inevitably, yeah, there's gonna be days and where you're just killing yourself, right, for having a bad game or having a human moment. Like my biggest fear, not fear, but the worst thing that could happen would be play on a Saturday night and then you don't play again until Tuesday and you have a bad game Saturday, and it's like, I got to live with this for Sunday, Monday, and I don't get a chance for redemption until. So anyway, those are things as you get older, you start to deal with a little bit differently. But yeah, I think being captain, it pushed it for sure.
Yeah. Listen, I've seen you and listened to you quite a bit on TSN over the years. I've been back here for 12 years now. So TSN, it's just, the coverage is unbelievable, and certainly seen you, talk quite a few times after games or whatever, and you've always handled yourself well and spoke.
You've always
well.
lied really good.
Impressive.
You lied really
good.
Yeah.
I tell you, sometimes, and you guys know this, but sometimes you get the questions and it's like your insides are just exploding, and that's where it's tough. That's where it's really tough.
Well, we had Max on, all right, Pacioretty. And Max, I remember when he got the captaincy here, and like, man, being a goal scorer like that and the pressure here, he'd have an off game, they'd be up his ass, he'd have to talk about the team. Then you got the French guys going and the English guy. It's just insane. But to Max's credit, when he came on here, and Max got fed up with all that shit at the end. It was hard on him. But he said on here with me and Tim how when he went to Vegas, he kind of missed that. He had to find it within himself. He had to put the pressure on himself. He said that the team wasn't, management wasn't, no one was. The fans weren't, the media wasn't. And he said, I really had to find that within myself for the first time because it was always coming from the outside when he was here. So it was a pretty interesting statement. Canadian market is a whole fucking different animal than playing in fucking California.
Atlanta.
Yeah, that's where, when you say, what would you say to your 18-year-old self? Like, that's where I kind of know that the pressure is, it's high, but sometimes that's what's needed, like that's what, like the kick in the ass you need sometimes. And to know that, like for me to know that when I go to the rink, like I'm playing in front of people that actually care, like they're not just going there to socialize and get out of the house. Like
not like my neighbor. You remember my neighbor?
No,
like, hey, you ever check Patrick Kane? You're like, dude, you looked at me. You're like, is this a real question? And that's what my neighbor asked this duck, and I was so embarrassed. Anyways.
Well, I think he asked, have you ever played against Patrick Kane?
Yeah, it was something like, you ever been, like, you just looked at me, and I'm like, sorry, dude. Anyways, go ahead.
Is he really good?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. No, but yeah, I think like knowing that you're playing against, playing in front of people that care, they care about what you're doing, like that's motivation in and of itself to be like, I gotta bring it every night because these people aren't just here to, just BS. Like they're here because they love the game, they love the team, and they want to see us do well. So I think that's been a really big driver in my career, and especially the success that we've had here in Winnipeg.
I'll be honest with you. Looking at the Habs a couple of years ago when they went to the final, when they got to Winnipeg, I couldn't believe what happened.
Yeah,
like
we couldn't believe it.
Not to bring up bad shit, but listen, you talked about it earlier. Caught lightning in a bottle, and Price was as good as he could be, but sweeping the Jets, I was freaking shocked. Like, did you guys what happened there? That like,
well, yeah. So like when the matchups came out and we were playing Edmonton in the first round, I think we were all kind of like, because Edmonton had like Connor had like 50 points against us in 9 games or something. Like it was like it just wasn't fun, right? And we're kind of like, we're gonna play these guys 7 times. Like this is gonna be great. So so when we swept Edmonton, we're kind of like, oh, maybe we figured something out here. We got it together, and we were like, we were 1000% sure that we were playing Toronto in the next round. I think they played like a game 5, like the night after we beat Edmonton. So we're watching that and like expecting Toronto to win. They don't. And it kind of just keeps going like that for like 8 days, right? And we're just kind of sitting in the ass, like waiting for the next game. And I think that, our mistake was that we didn't prepare both ways, right? Like we were so dead set that we were going to play Toronto, that when it was Montreal, it's like, holy shit, like, okay, we got to start over here. And we had like a day to prepare. And I think it's sometimes, when you're the team sitting around and the other team just kind of came back and they're on a roll and they're feeling good. And they were hot, they came back and they beat Toronto. So they were flying. And then we, losing Scheif game 1 for the rest of, for the next 4 games was just like, that was a killer, that hurt big time. So now, now we're just playing kind of shorthanded for the rest of the way. And we just, I think what I said after that series was we just could never get the first goal. They scored the first goal, and every game for the rest of the way that they won, they scored the first goal, and they were just so committed to, defense and in front of Price. And it was just really tough once you got behind.
We're trying to find Big Buff because we want to have Big Buff on here. How is Big Buff? And I'm not asking you Because I was asking Tim, and fucking Tim, I got to get him to get it done. I have to get him in a headlock, but I'm never in the same state. Big Buff as a teammate, and then as a player on your team, how was this guy? Because I loved watching him. I loved his attitude on the ice, everything.
There's nobody has ever or will ever be Buff ever again, right? In the NHL. I mean, he was like one of a kind. You know, him in the room, you know, he was just such a great, you know, like change up from me. You know, I'm pretty like driven and sometimes like over serious and take things a little bit too seriously. And like, he just comes and just BS's all day, right? He's just there to have a good time and messes with guys. And, so he was a great change up for me. And as a player, like I've said it a million times and I'll say it a million more, like there's not a guy I would trade Buff for, you know, when Buff was playing on our team in his prime. There's not a guy in the league I'd trade him for. Like his A game was ask if you guys get any top guy, you know, in the NHL, I don't care what their name is, who they are, ask them, you know, who they hated playing against the most, and they will say Buff. Because you don't know, because of how big he is, because of how well he moved, but also because you don't know what the hell he's going to do. Yeah. Like when JT Miller scored that goal and he decapitated him, like he will do that, and he doesn't give two shits about it. Yeah. So like I took him for granted for sure. Like I took him for granted, like just in terms of how easy he made the game on us because of how well he moved the puck. But just because of his presence on the ice too. Like, I mean, you had an extra little bit of ice out there because you had to deal with Buff, and nobody wants to deal with him, right? Like he's just, man, he was a special guy. So I saw him once this summer. He came to my daughter's birthday party, and he's same, just loving life, hunting, fishing, hanging out, you know, just enjoying himself. So I think he's in a good spot.
Hey, well said. I don't have more. You played. Oh, fuck.
Oh, here he is.
Oh, here he is.
Gary.
I know I have to ask a question, at least one question, because
how did you know I was even finished yet?
Yeah, we have.
I heard a nice pause.
I heard a nice pause. This is part
I was just waiting for Tim. No, go ahead.
This is part one of the documentary. Blake. No, go ahead.
No, Blake has had an unbelievable career. I think the most underrated career, almost a point a game. When I saw that, I couldn't believe it. So it's just
because you thought his name was Jack. No,
yeah, I know. I was looking for Jack all that time.
About it, yeah, he's like hockey DB and Jack Wheeler.
Jack Wheeler is a fun player.
This guy sucks. He's not even in the fucking database.
No, but it's unbelievable. Is there any game? You've had such a long, successful career. Is there any game that stands out in your career that you say is like an unbelievable game that you played that you just think back on that's just, you know, special?
I mean, the ones that stand out are like the first game, obviously, because like I still didn't believe that like I belonged out there, you know, and I'm just like, what the hell am I doing out here? And I was playing on a line with David Krejci and Chuck Kovacic, and like I'm just like, I have no business being out there. You know, like I remember being on the defensive zone draw, and I knew Paul Stastny pretty well at that point already, and he was playing for Colorado, and he had Joe Sakic on his wing, and we're lining up the D1 draw, and he's like Wheels, what's going on? And I'm terrified. I'm like, oh, you know. And I'm lining next to Joe Sakic, and I'm like, how fast is this going to be in our net? You know what I mean? I need to escape this shift just to prolong my career by one more shift, you know? And so that one stands out. Like the 1,000th game last year stands out. Just, you know, it was pretty sweet to my family out on the ice with me and playing against Toronto at home. Like it was just kind of like a perfect way to celebrate.
What about the game where like the guy threw like the authentic Wheeler jersey and it like unraveled?
That one stands out in a bad way. That was you'll probably remember this one when we were up 3-0 on Philly, and then they came back and beat us in Game 7.
Oh yeah. You were there. You were there for that. I didn't know you were there for that.
You guys
yeah, so we go to the handshake line, and we had just blown a 3-game series lead and blown a 3-goal lead in Game 7. And we're going through the handshake line, and I'm just, we're all just kind of like, what just happened? And I'm like circling back to like go back to the bench to like leave the ice. And a guy's so mad that he chucks a Bruins jersey on the ice from the stands. And like it's like falling to the ice, and as it like falls, it flips over face down, and just a Wheeler 26 is like face up.
Ooh, that's how mad this guy was.
Like, that was like a $250 authentic jersey, and he's like, I don't even want to look at this anymore. So that's one of my Boston memories for sure.
So Barry, any more? You got some more?
Just one more. I want to know if Tim was telling us the truth that he changed your career because you went through 20 games without scoring a goal.
Wasn't it 20 games you went with like that? Yeah, without it.
I was 18, and I actually did a 23-year last year, so I one-upped it last year.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I did 18 games, and it got so bad that the coach finally put me on a line with Buster.
More and more.
That was like the look in the mirror moment. It's like either this or I got to get my shit together.
You were on ZipRecruiter.
I'm like this. I gotta figure this out. I can't do this.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Listen, I got one more because Barry cut me off. I was just gonna ask you. Being a family man now, having children, playing the NHL, how has it changed from like when you were the single guy, not worrying about nothing, and now all of a sudden you got your wife and kids, and how has that changed you?
I mean, I know it's changed me like hugely, for the better. I think, just like the accountability of, kind of being in charge of other people's lives is a huge responsibility. And, going from, not having a care in the world, just kind of coming home and just doing whatever you want all day, every day to, having to, look out for the kids and, sort of hiding maybe a good game or a bad game and just being dad and kind of leaving work at work is, it's a skill and it takes a while to learn, but, I mean, it definitely has its challenges, it has its challenges but to be a dad like that, like kind of my two biggest goals in my life were to be a dad and to, be a professional athlete, and to kind of be doing those things, side by side is just, pretty grateful. You know what I mean? It's pretty awesome.
Especially when you're so old, especially when you're the 17th oldest player.
17th oldest player.
No, it's great to hear because we talked about that like 2 years, or when I saw you 2 times ago, we had a long talk about that, just how hard that is. And it sounds like it's going good. At least like patience, your patience is probably a lot better, right?
My patience is a lot better now because all 3 kids are in all day school now. So Mace is in kindergarten all day. So like, my patience is great now. I have all day.
It's like I love my kids, but get away from me.
Yeah, exactly. But oh man, I mean, you learn pretty quick that like, it's nobody cares about you had a bad game or a good game or a long night or a short night or what you want to do right now. Like you got to step up. It's like it's time for you to step up. So that was life changing and for the good though.
Good stuff. But listen, Blake, I want to thank you again for taking the time. It was awesome having you on, and again, nothing but respect for you. Really, I've like I said, I've watched you over the years, and it's impressive what you've done. Consistent as ever. Good stuff. Really good stuff.
Appreciate you guys.